Welcome to Heaven Awaits. My name is Leigh, and I narrate the near-death experiences of those who have died and have seen the other side. Get comfy, grab a coffee or tea, and let's dive into today's experiences. The day I drowned was a time I would never forget, even when so many years passed. My parents, 6 sisters, and I lived in one of the most beautiful places. Our home was in front of a wide trench connected to the Damara River. During high tide, the water in the trench would be very high. Mom and Dad worked full-time, so we girls always had a lot of time for fun. Mom worked from morning until evening, so Dad came home earlier. The day I drowned, it was high tide, so the water in the trench was very high. The trench was light blue, and the sun was shining beautifully. It was about 3 p.m. after school hours. 2 of my sisters, 2 other friends living next door to us, and myself were ready to have fun in the water. Not one of us could swim, so each one of us took a bucket to keep us floating. We usually have an adult with us, but this time, we did not. I was the leader. We took our buckets and went into the water. Although, we had learned that we should only stay where we can stand in the water, so we could feel the ground and keep our heads above water. But, that day, we had so much fun holding the bucket and paddling our feet. One of my friends and I went out in the middle of the trench, where we couldn't reach the bottom. At that moment, the friend next to me let go of her bucket. She grabbed a hold of my bucket, and I let it go to her. I noticed my sisters and friends start screaming. Then, it dawned on me that I was going to drown. I remember telling my sisters to take my hand, but all I could see was that they were crying and screaming. Nobody was home or around. Daddy was planning to go to the movie. He was all dressed up and was leaving our house when he heard the screaming of my sisters and friends that I was drowning. I understood from Daddy later that it was the scariest time ever in his life. He told me that he had never jumped so far out in the water before. He explained to me later his heart was beating so fast while he was looking for me, and it took him half an hour to find me. All I could remember was that while my sisters and friends were crying and Daddy was looking for me, I saw a large hand. It was bigger than the trench, with enormous, beautiful lights taking me out of the water. At that moment, I said to myself, "Aha, I am safe." I remember that I was enjoying the light. The eye started floating in a tunnel of beautiful orange-colored lights. It was very peaceful and soft. After some time, traveling in the lights, I felt my feet touch the sand. I said to myself, I can get out now from the water. But when I opened my eyes, I noticed I was lying on the roadside. My dad was trying to press the water out of me, which was not there. I also saw some people, including my sisters and friends who were all around me. I felt embarrassed for what I had put everyone through, so I got up and walked away. After this event, I became a good swimmer. I love the sea, being next to the water, and enjoying the sounds of the water. Sadly, my sisters who experienced this event are afraid of swimming. Before Daddy passed away, he asked me to tell him what I saw under the water, because he knew that he had not saved me. I told him about the light, and he was in peace then. Moving right along to the second experience of this video. Without going into graphic detail, I want to share my up-close and personal experience undergoing a video urodynamic testing procedure at a city hospital. To provide some background, I have lived with a spinal cord injury for 20 years. This has caused nerve damage that affects many parts of my body and its functions. I have had more than 10 spinal surgeries, and both sides of my spine are fused through 5 levels. As a result of the injury, I experienced significant bladder function issues. My doctor recommended video urodynamic testing to better understand which functions remain. In October 2024, I stopped taking all medications after spending 20 years in constant pain and trying nearly every medication available. Since then, I have been managing my pain and stress without medication, which has been extremely challenging. For the procedure, I had to drive approximately 3 hours to a large, densely populated city that is very different from the quieter area where I live. I stayed in a hotel that had a flat, hard bed and lacked the electric adjustable bed I normally use. I skipped my usual morning coffee, which I typically rely on to function throughout the day. I also struggled with constipation that morning, which added to my discomfort and stress. I was exhausted, sleep-deprived, and already feeling overwhelmed. I had not been allowed to drink coffee, which I usually consume in large amounts by that time of day. I had to fill my bladder for the test, which added to my discomfort, and then drive to the hospital during morning rush hour traffic. After arriving at the hospital parking structure, I had to drive up and down 5 levels to find a parking spot. The elevators only reached certain floors, which made it even more frustrating. Eventually, I located the correct apartment. I changed into a thin gown and housecoat, then waited in a cold room. When I was finally called in, I was asked to sit on a regular chair across from a nurse who began going through several pages of intake questions. I had not expected to complete paperwork at this point, and the stress of the situation made it very difficult to concentrate. After answering about 2 pages of questions, I told the nurse I needed to urinate badly, as I had been holding it for a while in preparation for the test. They then had me move to a special exam bed, where I sat with my legs hanging off the edge while lying back. The nurse inserted a rectal device to take measurements. This was extremely painful, especially as I was constipated and suffering from hemorrhoids. They then explained that they would insert a large catheter, then remove it in order to place a smaller one required for the imaging. Both catheter insertions were excruciating. The pain felt like a burning, ripping pressure that continued even after the catheter was in place. There was no freezing or numbing, and I was fully awake and unmedicated throughout the process. Because of my limited mobility, I could not see what was happening. However, I realized that the nurse had secured the catheter with a large piece of thick, shiny, pink medical tape that was applied directly to the most sensitive part of my body. When I asked about it, she confirmed it was tape and explained that it was necessary to keep the catheter in place during imaging. I was then instructed to walk to another room for the X-ray process, still wearing the catheter and tape. I was shaking, freezing, and in severe pain. After the procedure was complete, I sat on the exam machine, shivering. The nurse told me she was going to remove the devices. She quickly pulled out the rectal probe, which hurt badly. Before I had time to process that pain, she ripped off the tape and removed the catheter in one motion. The pain was overwhelming and immediate. Shortly after, I began to lose consciousness. As I fainted, I experienced a vivid vision. I was inside what looked like a 1950s-style house with green painted walls, dark wood trim, and worn tile or vinyl floors. Children, possibly between 3 and 5 years old, were happily playing on the floor, dressed in formal clothing. I felt peaceful and comforted. Then a white blur began to grow in the center of my vision. The children became quieter. I began to see metal shapes emerge through the light. There was a fuzzy face to my right, and I suddenly felt like I was being pulled away from this peaceful place. I did not want to leave. I felt sad, as if I was being taken away from somewhere I belonged. The blurry face became clearer. A nurse was tapping on my chest and repeating, "Stay with me." I could now see her hair, and there was a doctor to my front right. A strong man was holding my shoulders to keep me upright in a sitting position. I noticed a total of about 6 people in the room. I remember seeing the heart monitor displaying a rate of 24 beats per minute, slowly increasing to 27, then 29. The doctor reminded me to breathe. Someone else mentioned 5 minutes. I heard the words, "crash cart." Someone said, "Put him in room number 3. We don't usually use it." There was discussion about whether to send me to the emergency room, but they decided to keep me under observation for a while. They laid me on a stretcher and tilted it so that blood could return to my brain. They checked on me every 5 minutes. After about 20 minutes, they handed me a bag with my clothes, directed me to the changing room, and then discharged me. I drove home directly, a journey of about 4 hours. I was in a fog, unable to shake the vivid memory of the children playing in that quiet house. After doing some research, I believe I experienced an episode of neurocardiogenic syncope, also known as vasovagal syncope. This is a form of fainting triggered by an overreaction of the nervous system. It causes a sudden drop in heart rate and blood pressure, leading to a temporary loss of consciousness. I have experienced blood pressure drops and tunnel vision episodes before, but never anything this intense. The overwhelming stress of chronic pain, the difficult journey, the unexpected intensity of the procedure, and especially the painful removal of the catheter and tape overwhelmed my already overtaxed system. The result was one of the most frightening experiences I have ever had. That does it for today's experiences. As always, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. If you enjoyed these experiences, consider hitting the subscribe button. It is free, and it does help the channel grow. Until next time, stay safe and continue to be blessed.